The massive ship hung in space like a dead giant. Its hull was darker than the void around it, catching no light from the distant stars. Scientists from across the galaxy had gathered to study it, their smaller vessels looking like insects around a sleeping beast. The ship had appeared 3 weeks ago, drifting into explored space from some unknown region beyond the frontier. Nobody knew where it came from or who built it. Dr. Velthar stood on the observation deck of the research station, his 4 eyes studying the vessel through the viewport. He was Kryn, a species known for their analytical minds and patient nature. His people had been exploring space for over 10,000 years, yet he had never seen technology like this. The ship was enormous, easily 3 miles long, with smooth surfaces that seemed to absorb scanner beams rather than reflect them. Next to him, Quenza made a clicking sound of frustration. The Vethil scientist had been trying to access the ship's systems for days with no success. Her tentacles tapped against her data tablet as she reviewed the latest failed attempt. Every known method of interface had been tried. Energy pulses, quantum signals, even basic radio waves. The ship remained silent and dark. Jake Morrison floated through the docking bay of his small cargo hauler, checking the seals on the equipment containers. He was human, which meant most of the alien scientists barely noticed him. Humans were newcomers to galactic society, having only made contact 15 years ago. To the older species, humans were primitive and unremarkable. Jake didn't mind. It meant less attention and fewer problems. His partner Lisa Grant emerged from the engine room, wiping grease from her hands. She was shorter than Jake, with dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail. They had been working together for 5 years, hauling cargo and doing salvage work across the outer systems. The pay wasn't great, but they were their own bosses. "Everything secure?" Lisa asked. Jake nodded. "Ready when they are. Though I don't know why they need all this equipment if nothing they try is working." "Not our problem," Lisa said with a shrug. "We get paid either way." The call came an hour later. The research team was preparing another boarding attempt, and they needed the equipment transported to the alien ship. Jake and Lisa suited up and loaded the cargo onto a transfer shuttle. Velthar and 3 other scientists joined them for the short flight across the void. The alien ship loomed larger as they approached. Up close, Jake could see patterns etched into the hull, designs that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to shift when he wasn't focusing on them. The shuttle docked at an open bay that the research team had discovered on their first boarding. The bay doors had been open when they found the ship, as if inviting visitors inside. Inside, the ship was just as dark as it appeared from outside. The research team had set up portable lights, creating pools of illumination in the vast corridors. Jake and Lisa helped unload the equipment while the scientists moved deeper into the ship, heading toward what they believed was the command center. The interior architecture was strange. The corridors were too wide, the ceilings too high. Whoever built this ship hadn't been human-sized. Yet there were also spaces that seemed designed for smaller beings, creating an odd mix of scales. Jake noticed that some of the walls had the same shifting patterns as the exterior hull. They reached the command center after a 20-minute walk. The room was circular with a raised platform in the center. On that platform sat a single chair facing a curved console. The console was dark, like everything else on the ship. Around the walls, other stations waited in silence. Velthar immediately began setting up scanning equipment. Quenza moved to the central console, her tentacles dancing over its surface as she tried once again to trigger a response. Nothing happened. Other scientists spread throughout the room, each trying their own methods. Jake set down the last equipment case and stretched. His muscles were sore from the heavy lifting. Lisa wandered over to one of the wall stations, examining it with professional curiosity. She had always been fascinated by alien technology. "You ever see anything like this?" Jake asked her. "Never," Lisa said. "The design doesn't match any known civilization. And look at this." She pointed to a section of the console. "No visible power source, no wiring. It's like the whole ship is made from a single piece of material." Jake walked up to the central platform, curious. The scientists were busy with their equipment and weren't paying attention to him. He climbed the 3 steps to the platform and looked at the chair. It was surprisingly simple in design. Despite being part of such an advanced ship, the seat looked almost comfortable. "Don't touch anything," Velthar called out without looking up from his scanner. Jake held up his hands, just looking. But he was tired, and the chair did look comfortable. Without really thinking about it, Jake sat down. It fit him perfectly, which was odd considering it had been designed by aliens. He leaned back, his hands resting on the armrests. The ship woke up. Light flooded the command center so suddenly that everyone cried out in surprise. The console in front of Jake blazed to life with symbols and patterns that seemed to write themselves in glowing text. Every station around the walls activated simultaneously. The floor beneath them hummed with power that had been dormant for who knew how long. Jake jumped out of the chair, his heart pounding. I didn't do anything. I just sat down. But the ship didn't go dark again. If anything, more systems came online. Screens materialized in the air, showing views of space outside. The symbols on the console rearranged themselves, shifting from the alien script into something else. Jake stared at them. He couldn't read them exactly, but somehow he understood their meaning. Navigation, power distribution, life support. All systems functioning normally. Velthar and Quensa rushed to the platform, their instruments forgotten. The other scientists crowded around, speaking rapidly in their various languages. Jake stepped back, letting Lisa pull him away from the chair. What did you do? She whispered. Nothing. I just sat down. Velthar approached the chair cautiously. He reached out to touch the armrest, and immediately the lights dimmed. The moment his hand left the chair, they brightened again. He turned to look at Jake with all four eyes wide. Sit down again, Velthar said. Jake hesitated, then climbed back onto the platform and sat in the chair. The ship responded instantly. The humming grew stronger. More displays activated. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with markers scattered across it. Quensa moved to her translator device, her tentacles shaking with excitement. She spoke rapidly in her own language, then waited for the translation. The ship is responding to human biology. It's keyed to your species specifically. That's impossible, Jake said. Humans just got here. We're nobody. Apparently, Velthar said slowly. You are somebody to whoever built this ship. The holographic map rotated, and one of the markers began to pulse. Text appeared beneath it in that strange script that Jake could somehow partially understand. A location, a destination, a purpose. The ship was waiting for instructions. It was waiting for a human to tell it what to do. Jake looked at Lisa, then at the gathered scientists, then at the glowing console before him. His simple life as a cargo hauler had just become infinitely more complicated. The research station buzzed with activity. Word had spread quickly about the ship's activation, and now representatives from a dozen different species crowded the observation decks. Everyone wanted to see the human who had awakened the ancient vessel. Jake sat in a conference room, feeling very small and very uncomfortable. Across the table, officials from the Kryn Consortium and the Vethel Collective argued about jurisdiction. The ship had been found in neutral space, which meant no single government could claim it. But now that it responded only to humans, everything had changed. Lisa stood behind Jake's chair, her arms crossed. She didn't trust politicians, alien or otherwise. We need to understand what we're dealing with, Velthar said, trying to maintain order. The ship is clearly ancient, possibly older than any civilization we know. We must proceed carefully. Carefully? A Vethel commander slammed his appendage on the table. The humans have activated a weapons platform of unknown power. This is a security concern for every species in the sector. We don't know it's a weapons platform, Jake said quietly. All eyes turned to him. He cleared his throat. I mean, when I sat in the chair, I could feel the ship. Sort of. It didn't feel aggressive. It felt like it was waiting. Waiting for what? Quensa asked. She had been friendlier than most of the other aliens. Genuinely curious rather than suspicious. I don't know. Instructions, maybe? A purpose? Before anyone could respond, the lights in the conference room flickered. A shimmer appeared in the air above the table, and suddenly they weren't alone. A figure materialized, translucent and glowing with soft light. It was vaguely humanoid, but larger, with proportions that seemed slightly off. Its face was smooth and featureless except for 2 points of light where eyes might be. Everyone jumped to their feet. Security personnel reached for weapons. The figure raised its hands in a peaceful gesture. Please do not be alarmed, it said. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, speaking in each listener's own language. I am Warden, the custodian intelligence of the vessel you call the Sentinel. I mean no harm. Jake found his voice first. You're the ship's computer? I am more than a computer, but that description is adequate for now. The glowing figure turned to face Jake. You are the one who activated the primary systems. You carry the marker. What marker? Warden gestured, and holographic images filled the air around them. Spirals of DNA, genetic code, fragments of data that shifted too quickly to read. Billions of years ago, a species we call the progenitors seeded life across multiple galaxies. They were the first, and they were great beyond measure. But they knew they would not last forever. So they built safeguards and left behind tools for the species that would come after. The images changed, showing massive ships like the Sentinel, hundreds of them, scattered across the stars. Each vessel was keyed to a specific genetic pattern, hidden within the DNA of certain species. These patterns would only fully express themselves after millions of years of evolution, when a species reached the right level of development. Velthar leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. You're saying the progenitors planned for us? All of us? Not all species carry the marker, Warden explained. Only some. Humanity is one such species. The genetic sequence was embedded in your ancestors long before they left their homeworld, long before they developed language or tools. It has been waiting dormant for you to reach the stars. Jake felt dizzy. Why us? Humans are barely even a spacefaring species. There are dozens of races more advanced than us. Advancement is not measured only in technology, Warden said. The progenitors looked for other qualities: adaptability, resilience, the capacity for growth and change. Humanity possesses these qualities in abundance. What is the purpose of these ships? Quinza asked. Why create them? The holographic images shifted again, this time showing something darker. Tears in space, regions where reality seemed to break down, shadowy forms that moved in ways that hurt to watch. The progenitors fought a war against entities from beyond normal space, beings of pure entropy that consume entire dimensions. The progenitors won that war and sealed the entities away, but they knew the seals would not last forever. The Sentinel ships are guardians, Warden continued, designed to protect against the return of what the progenitors called the Void Striders. Each ship is powerful enough to fight these entities, but only when piloted by a species carrying the genetic marker. The ship bonds with its pilot, creating a connection that allows mortal beings to wield progenitor technology. Lisa spoke up. And Jake has this genetic marker? Just him? All humans carry it, Warden said. But the bond is individual. The ship has chosen Jake Morrison specifically because he was the first to sit in the pilot's chair. The connection is now established. It cannot be transferred to another. Jake's stomach dropped. What if I don't want this? What if I just want to go back to my normal life? Warden's glowing form seemed to dim slightly. That is your choice. The ship will respond to your commands, but it will not force you. However, you should know that my activation means the seals are weakening. The Void Striders will return in time. Without pilots for the Sentinel ships, your galaxy will be defenseless. The room fell silent. Jake could feel everyone staring at him. The weight of their expectations pressed down like a physical force. He looked at Lisa, searching for guidance. She met his eyes and gave him a small nod. Your choice, she said quietly. But you know you'll regret it if you walk away. Jake turned back to Warden. If I agree to pilot the ship, what happens? Do I just sit in the chair and wait for these void things to show up? You must train, Warden said. Learn the ship's systems. Develop the bond. The neural connection will allow me to teach you directly, downloading knowledge into your mind. But it takes time and it will not be easy. The ship is vast and complex. Even with my help, mastering it will require dedication. And what about the rest of humanity? Velthar asked. If the ship only responds to humans, does that change Earth's standing in the galactic community? That question hung in the air. Jake realized what the Kryn scientist was really asking. Overnight, humanity had gone from being insignificant newcomers to possessing a strategic asset that might be the most powerful ship in the galaxy. Every species in this room would be recalculating their relationships with Earth. The ship is not a bargaining chip, Jake said firmly. If I do this, I'm not doing it for politics or power plays. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Noble sentiment, the Vethel commander said. But naive. Your government will not see it that way. Neither will ours. Jake stood up, surprising himself with his own boldness. Then that's their problem. Warden, you said the ship has chosen me. Does that mean it will only respond to my commands? Correct. You are the pilot. The ship is bound to you until you release it or until you die. Good. Jake looked around the room at all the assembled officials and scientists. Then here's how this is going to work. I'll learn to pilot the Sentinel. I'll prepare for these Void Striders if they come, but I'm not taking orders from any government, human or alien. The ship stays neutral. It protects everyone, not just one species or nation. You can't be serious, someone protested. I am. Jake surprised himself with how calm he felt. This is bigger than politics. If what Warden says is true, we're talking about a threat to the entire galaxy. That means everyone needs to work together, not fight over who controls what. Velthar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. An interesting proposition. Difficult to enforce, but interesting. Warden's glowing form brightened. The progenitors would have approved. They believed in unity against the darkness. If you are ready, Jake Morrison, we should begin your training. The seals are weakening faster than anticipated. Time is not on our side. Jake took a deep breath and looked at Lisa one more time. She smiled and squeezed his shoulder. I'm with you, partner, always. All right, Jake said, turning back to Warden. Let's do this. Show me how to fly a starship. The holographic figure bowed slightly. Follow me to the Sentinel. Your training begins now. And Jake Morrison, know this. The ship did not choose you randomly. It saw something in you worth binding to. Trust in that, and in yourself. As they left the conference room, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever. He was no longer just a cargo hauler. He was the pilot of an ancient warship, humanity's key to technologies beyond imagination, and possibly the first line of defense against a threat that could destroy galaxies. No pressure, he thought to himself. No pressure at all. 3 days had passed since Jake agreed to pilot the Sentinel. 3 days of the most intense learning experience of his life. When Warden had mentioned downloading knowledge directly into his mind, Jake hadn't fully understood what that meant. Now he did, and his head ached with information about power systems, navigation protocols, and weapon configurations that no human had ever needed to know before. He stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, looking out at the research station through the view screen. Lisa worked at one of the side consoles, familiarizing herself with the ship's engineering systems. Warden had agreed to let her serve as Jake's co-pilot and chief engineer. 2 others had joined them as well. Velthar had requested permission to come aboard as a scientific observer, and surprisingly, Quenza had asked to join as communications officer. The Vethel scientist had become genuinely fascinated by the ship and wanted to learn more. All systems are ready. Warden's voice echoed through the bridge. The test flight can begin when you are prepared. Jake settled into the pilot's chair. The moment he sat down, he felt the now familiar sensation of the ship connecting to his mind. It was like having a new sense, an awareness that extended far beyond his body. He could feel the power flowing through the Sentinel systems, the integrity of the hull, even the life signs of his small crew. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. Everyone strapped in? Jake asked. Ready? Lisa called from her station. Prepared, Velthar said. His 4 eyes focused on his scientific instruments. Let's fly, Quenza added, her tentacles gripping her console with barely contained excitement. Jake placed his hands on the control interface. Unlike traditional controls, these responded to both physical touch and mental commands. He thought about moving the ship forward, and the Sentinel responded smoothly, pulling away from the research station. The massive vessel handled like it weighed nothing, gliding through space with grace that defied its size. How does it feel? Lisa asked. Like I've been flying this ship my whole life, Jake said, and it was true. The downloaded knowledge had given him technical understanding, but the bond with the ship provided something more, an instinctive connection that made piloting natural. He accelerated, watching the station shrink behind them. Take us toward the asteroid field in Sector 7, Warden suggested. That will provide a suitable test of your maneuvering capabilities. Jake nodded and adjusted course. The Sentinel responded instantly to his thoughts, turning with a precision that would have been impossible with manual controls alone. They reached the asteroid field in minutes, a dense cluster of rocks tumbling through space. Some were small, but others were the size of buildings. Navigate through the field, Warden instructed. Trust your connection to the ship. Jake took a breath and guided the Sentinel into the asteroids. Immediately, his mind filled with spatial awareness. He could sense the position of every rock around them, predict their trajectories, see paths through the chaos that normal sensors would miss. The ship moved like a dancer, weaving between obstacles that would have torn a normal vessel apart. Belthar's instruments chirped frantically. Impossible. The G-forces should be crushing us, but the internal dampeners are compensating perfectly. I'm reading less than 1% variance from standard gravity. Progenitor technology, Warden said with something that might have been pride in his synthetic voice. Built to protect organic crew even during extreme maneuvers. Jake was starting to enjoy himself. The fear and uncertainty of the past few days faded as he lost himself in the pure joy of flight. He pushed the Sentinel faster, threading through tighter gaps, testing the limits of both the ship and his own reflexes. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment. Then the distress signal came through. Quenza's console lit up with alerts. I'm receiving an emergency transmission. A colony on the third planet of this system is under attack. Under attack by what? Lisa asked, moving to look at Quenza's display. Reading as Ravagers, Quenza said, her tentacles working rapidly to decode the signal. Multiple ships. The colony's defenses are failing. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Ravagers were a species known for their brutality. They raided frontier colonies, taking resources and prisoners. Galactic law enforcement tried to stop them, but they were too spread out and too unpredictable. How far? Jake asked. 15 minutes at maximum conventional speed, Belthar said, checking his instruments. Jake looked at the display showing the besieged colony. He could see it in his mind. People dying while he sat here safely in space. The decision came easily. Warden, can this ship help them? The Sentinel is equipped with advanced defensive and offensive systems, Warden said. However, engaging in combat without proper training is dangerous. More dangerous than letting people die? Jake's hands tightened on the controls. I'm going in. Everyone hang on. He reached into the bond with the ship, searching for the faster-than-light systems. Knowledge flooded his mind. Instructions from the progenitors filtered through Warden's teaching. Space folding, gravity manipulation, shortcuts through higher dimensions. Jake activated the drive with a thought. The stars stretched. Reality bent. The Sentinel jumped forward, crossing 15 minutes of distance in 15 seconds. They emerged in orbit above the colony world, and Jake could immediately see the situation below. 4 Ravager ships circled the settlement, firing on the defensive barriers. On the ground, buildings burned and people fled in panic. Weapon systems online, Warden said. Remember your training. Intent drives the weapons. Focus on disabling, not destroying. Jake had never fired a weapon in combat before. His cargo hauler had a few defensive guns, but he'd never needed to use them. Now he was piloting a ship that could probably level a planet. The responsibility was terrifying, but people were dying below, and he was the only one who could help. He focused on the nearest Ravager ship, thinking about stopping it, disabling its engines without killing the crew. The Sentinel responded. Energy lanced from the ship's weapons, a beam of golden light that struck the Ravager vessel with surgical precision. The enemy ship's engines exploded in a shower of sparks, and it began to drift, powerless but intact. The other 3 Ravager ships noticed the Sentinel. They broke off their attack on the colony and turned toward the newcomer. Jake could see them charging weapons, preparing to fire. He reached deeper into the bond, and the Sentinel's defensive systems activated automatically. A shimmering barrier formed around the ship, invisible except where incoming fire splashed against it like water on glass. Shields holding at 98%, Lisa reported, awe in her voice. Their weapons barely scratched us. Jake disabled the second Ravager ship as easily as the first. The third tried to run, but the Sentinel was faster. Jake caught it before it could jump to faster-than-light speeds, disabling its drives with another precise shot. The fourth ship stopped fighting and broadcast a surrender signal. The entire engagement had lasted less than 3 minutes. Quenza opened a channel to the colony below. The governor's face appeared on screen, a Vethel female with scars from previous raids. Unknown vessel, this is Colony 7. Did you just save us? We did, Jake said, suddenly aware that he was now speaking for humanity to the wider galaxy. The Ravagers have been disabled. Galactic security forces should be able to pick them up. Who are you? The governor asked, her voice filled with wonder. Jake glanced at Lisa, who smiled and nodded. He turned back to the screen. This is the Sentinel. I'm Jake Morrison, the pilot. We were in the area for a test flight when we heard your distress call. You're human? The governor's tentacles drew back in surprise. But the ship, the technology, how did you? Long story, Jake said. The important thing is you're safe now. Do you need medical assistance? We can stay until help arrives. No, we'll manage. But thank you, Jake Morrison. Thank you for proving that not all those who travel the stars are predators. The transmission ended, but not before Jake saw tears in the governor's eyes. As they waited for security forces to arrive, Jake felt the adrenaline of combat fading. His hands were shaking slightly. He'd just fought his first battle, fired weapons powerful enough to cut through Starship armor and saved hundreds of lives. The reality of what he'd agreed to do, what he could do with the Sentinel, hit him with full force. Lisa came over and put a hand on his shoulder. You did good, Jake, really good. I was terrified, he admitted. Of course you were. You'd be crazy not to be. But you still acted. That's what matters. Velthar approached, his scientific detachment momentarily forgotten. That was extraordinary piloting. The precision of your attacks, the timing, it was as if you and the ship were thinking as one. We were, Jake said quietly. When I'm in this chair, connected to the ship, it's hard to tell where I end and the Sentinel begins. The bond is developing well, Warden observed. Today you proved that the ship chose correctly. You have the skill, the compassion, and the courage required of a Sentinel pilot. Quenza turned from her console. Jake, the Galactic News Networks picked up what happened here. The story is spreading fast. You're about to become very famous, Jake groaned. That's the last thing I need. But as he guided the Sentinel away from the colony, heading back toward Obaba, the video played across every news network in the galaxy. Jake watched himself on the screen. The Sentinel gliding through space with impossible grace, disabling Ravager ships in seconds. The commentator spoke in dozens of languages, but the message was the same. Humanity had arrived as a major power, and nothing would be the same again. Jake sat in the medical bay while doctors checked Lisa's injuries. The attack had happened 2 days ago at a space station while they were resupplying. 3 armed figures had ambushed them in a corridor, weapons drawn and ready to kill. Lisa had tackled Jake out of the line of fire, taking a plasma bolt to her shoulder in the process. Station security had captured the attackers, but the damage was done. You need to be more careful, Lisa said as the medical scanner hummed over her bandaged shoulder. Her face was pale, but she managed a weak smile. You're too important now. People want you dead. I don't want to be important, Jake said quietly. I just want things to go back to normal. Normal doesn't exist anymore. She winced as the doctor adjusted her arm. For you or for humanity, Earth's government is already negotiating new trade deals. Every species that dismissed humans before is now scrambling to make alliances. All because you sat in a chair. Jake knew she was right. The Human Coalition had contacted him repeatedly over the past week, requesting meetings, asking for cooperation. Other governments had done the same, some offering bribes, others making barely veiled threats. Everyone wanted control over the Sentinel, or at least influence over its pilot. Velthar entered the medical bay, his expression grave. We need to talk, privately. Jake followed him to a secure conference room. Quenza was already there, along with Warden's holographic form. The AI had been unusually quiet since the assassination attempt. The attackers have been identified, Velthar said without preamble. They were hired by a faction within the Kryn Consortium, not the official government, but powerful individuals who see humanity as a threat that needs to be eliminated before you can fully exploit progenitor technology. They're not the only ones, Quenza added. My government has similar concerns. The Vethel Collective has been debating whether to demand that Earth surrender the Sentinel for, quote, the good of galactic security. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The ship doesn't belong to Earth. It doesn't belong to anyone except whoever the progenitors intended to use it. That's you, Warden said softly. And that is precisely why you are in danger. There are those who would rather see the Sentinel destroyed than allow humans to possess such power. Can we talk about the elephant in the room? Jake asked. These Void Striders you mentioned. When are they actually coming? Because right now the only threats I'm seeing are from regular people, not dimensional entities. Warden's form flickered. That is what I needed to discuss. I have been monitoring subspace signals, measuring reality stress in known weak points. The seals are failing faster than my projections indicated. The Void Striders could emerge within months, not years. The room fell silent. Velthar was the first to speak. Months? But that means we have almost no time to prepare. Which is why Jake's training must accelerate, Warden said. And why we need to find the other Sentinel ships. The progenitors built multiple vessels, each keyed to different species. One ship alone cannot defend the entire galaxy. Other species have the genetic marker? Jake asked. Yes, though I do not know which ones. The progenitors scattered the markers widely, ensuring that multiple civilizations would be able to respond to the threat. But the Sentinel ships remain hidden, waiting for their pilots to find them. Quenza leaned forward. How do we find them? The Sentinel contains navigation data showing the locations of 12 other vessels. But reaching them will be dangerous. Some are in contested space, others in regions no one has explored for centuries. And now that the galaxy knows what the Sentinel is, there will be others trying to claim these ships. Jake stood up and began pacing. His mind was racing, trying to process everything. The assassination attempt had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. Seeing Lisa hurt because of him had been worse than any physical injury. But if Warden was right, if the Void Striders were coming soon, then personal safety couldn't be his priority. There's something else you should know, Warden said, and his tone made Jake stop pacing. The Sentinel is not just a ship. It is a key. When all 13 Sentinel vessels are activated and working together, they can do more than fight. They can reinforce the seals, push back the Void Striders, perhaps even close the breaches permanently. But only if all 13 are active, Velthar asked. Correct. One ship can fight and defend. 13 working in unison can win the war the progenitors started billions of years ago. Jake sat back down, the weight of responsibility pressing on him again. So I need to find the other ships. Convince whoever can pilot them to join me, train them, organize them, and do all of this while people are trying to kill me. And we have months, not years. Yes, Warden said simply. And what happens if I fail? If I die, or if we can't find all the ships in time? Then the Void Striders will consume this galaxy, system by system, star by star. They do not eat matter, they erase it. Everything the Striders touch is removed from existence itself. All the species of this galaxy, all their history and culture and dreams will simply cease to be. Jake looked at Lisa through the doorway to the medical bay. She was talking with the doctor, laughing at something despite her injury. He thought about his parents back on Earth, his sister, the billions of humans who had no idea what was coming. He thought about Velthar and his patient kindness, Quenza and her curious enthusiasm, even the grumpy officials who had argued over the Sentinel. All of them. Everyone in the galaxy depending on him to do something he barely understood. Then I guess failure isn't an option, Jake said quietly. Warden, I need you to train me harder. I need to know everything about this ship, everything about the Void Striders, everything the progenitors knew. No more holding back because you think it might be too much for me. The neural downloads will be painful, Warden warned. Your mind is not designed to absorb so much information so quickly. There could be permanent effects. I don't care. We're out of time. Velthar clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. And what about the other Sentinel ships? How do you plan to find their pilots? We start with the closest one and work our way out. Warden, show me the navigation data. Let's see where we need to go. A holographic map appeared showing the galaxy with 12 glowing points marking the hidden Sentinel ships. The nearest was only 3 days away at faster than light speeds, hidden in an abandoned nebula. The farthest was halfway across the galaxy, deep in territory controlled by hostile species. This one, Jake said, pointing to the nearest marker. We start here. But before we go, I need to talk to Lisa. She needs to know what we're getting into, and she needs to choose whether she wants to keep following me into danger. She will stay, Quenza said with certainty. I have observed you both. She believes in you, and more importantly, she believes in what you are trying to do. Maybe, Jake said, but she still deserves the choice. He walked back to the medical bay. Lisa saw his expression and immediately sat up straighter, ignoring the doctor's protests. What's wrong? Jake told her everything. The Void Striders, the timeline, the other Sentinel ships, the danger they would face trying to find them. He told her about the choice before him. Continue training, find the other pilots, prepare for a war that might already be lost. Or walk away and let someone else try to handle it. Lisa listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out with her good arm and took his hand. You're not walking away, she said. It wasn't a question. No, I can't, not knowing what I know now. Good, because I would have been really disappointed if you had. And I'm coming with you. Lisa, you were almost killed because of me. If you stay, it will only get more dangerous. Probably, she agreed. But you need someone watching your back. Someone you can trust completely. That's me, partner. Has been for 5 years, will be for however many more we get. Whether that's fighting dimensional monsters or just hauling cargo. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we survive whatever nightmare is coming. She squeezed his hand. Now get out of here and let me finish healing. We've got ships to find and a galaxy to save. Jake left the medical bay with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since this whole thing began. The fear was still there, the doubt was still there, but they were joined by something stronger. Determination. He was the pilot of the Sentinel, chosen by ancient powers for reasons he still didn't fully understand. But he was also Jake Morrison, cargo hauler and salvage worker, and he had a job to do. He just hoped he was strong enough to see it through. The alarm started at 3 a.m, station time. Jake was deep in neural training with Warden when the sound pierced through the connection, pulling him back to reality. He stumbled out of the training pod, his mind still half filled with progenitor battle tactics. What's happening? He called out as he ran toward the bridge. Lisa was already there, her injured shoulder now mostly healed thanks to advanced medical treatment. Her face was grim as she pointed to the main display. They're here, the Void Striders. They're coming through at the edge of the galaxy. The screen showed something that Jake's mind struggled to process. Space itself was tearing open, reality peeling back like old paper. Through the tears came shapes that moved wrong, that existed in too many dimensions at once. Even looking at them through a screen made Jake's eyes water and his head ache. How many? He asked. 17 confirmed breaches, Velthar reported from his station. Possibly more. The entities are emerging and moving inward, toward populated systems. They're consuming everything in their path. Stars, planets, space stations all being erased from existence. Quenza worked frantically at communications. Galactic defense forces are mobilizing, but their weapons aren't working. Energy weapons pass through the Striders like they aren't there. Kinetic weapons just disappear when they make contact. Nothing is stopping them. Jake felt ice in his stomach. This was it, the threat Warden had warned about, arriving months earlier than predicted. He moved to the pilot's chair and sat down, feeling the Sentinel wake fully around him. Through the bond, he could sense the ship's readiness, its ancient systems designed specifically for this moment. Warden, I need everything. Every weapon, every defense, every piece of knowledge the progenitors left about fighting these things. Opening all combat protocols, Warden said. But Jake, you must understand. One ship against 17 breaches is not enough. We need the other Sentinels. We don't have them. We have me, we have this ship, and we have people dying out there. Jake's hands moved across the controls, plotting a course to the nearest breach. I'm not sitting here while the galaxy burns. Lisa grabbed his arm. Jake, be smart about this. You can't save everyone. I can try. He looked at her, then at Velthar and Quenza. I understand if you want to stay here where it's safe. This isn't your fight. Don't be stupid, Lisa said. Of course it's our fight. We're crew, remember? Velthar clicked his mandibles in agreement. I did not come this far to abandon the mission now. Besides, someone needs to record what happens for scientific purposes. And someone needs to coordinate with the defense forces, Quenza added. You're not doing this alone, Jake Morrison. That was never the plan. Jake felt a surge of gratitude and affection for his crew. He nodded once, then activated the faster-than-light drive. The Sentinel jumped across vast distances in seconds, emerging near the first breach. What Jake saw there would haunt him for the rest of his life. A Void Strider was in the process of consuming a planet. The world was simply disappearing, being erased layer by layer as the entity passed over it. Jake could see cities vanishing, oceans ceasing to exist, the very matter of the planet being removed from reality. Ships that tried to evacuate were caught in the erasure field and disappeared without even leaving debris behind. Target locked, Jake said, his voice steady despite his horror. He reached deep into the bond with the Sentinel, accessing weapons that had been built to fight things from beyond normal space. Golden light gathered around the ship, power drawn from dimensions the progenitors had learned to tap billions of years ago. Jake fired. The beam that lanced from the Sentinel was different from anything modern weapons could produce. It didn't just carry energy. It carried assertion of reality itself, forcing existence onto things that existed in contradiction to normal space. The beam struck the Void Strider, and for the first time something hurt it. The entity recoiled, its impossible form writhing. Parts of it began to dissolve, pushed back toward the breach it had emerged from. But it didn't die. Instead, it turned its attention to the Sentinel, and Jake felt its regard like ice water in his veins. This thing was aware, intelligent in a way that was completely alien, and it was angry. "It's coming for us," Lisa warned as the Strider changed course, abandoning the planet to pursue the ship that had wounded it. Jake pushed the Sentinel into evasive maneuvers. The ship responded to his thoughts, dancing through space as the Void Strider lashed out with appendages that shouldn't exist in 3 dimensions. Where those appendages touched space, reality fractured, creating zones of pure chaos. "Keep firing," Jake shouted. "Don't let it regenerate!" The battle became a deadly dance. Jake attacked and retreated, using the Sentinel's speed and agility to stay ahead of the Strider while continually hitting it with reality-asserting weapons. Slowly, painfully, the entity began to weaken. After 20 minutes of constant fighting, it finally collapsed, its form unraveling as it was forced back through the breach it had come from. Jake slumped in the pilot's chair, exhausted. Through the bond, he could feel the Sentinel's systems straining. That single fight had consumed enormous amounts of power. "One down," Belthar said quietly. 16 to go." "I can't do this 16 more times," Jake admitted. "Not alone. Even with the Sentinel, I'm not strong enough." That's when the communications console lit up with an urgent message. Quensa opened the channel, and a face appeared that Jake didn't recognize. The woman was human, young, with short blonde hair and determined eyes. "This is Kate Price calling from the research station at the Vale Nebula. We found another Sentinel. My brother Danny is sitting in the pilot's chair right now, and the ship is responding to him. We need help understanding what to do." Jake felt hope surge in his chest. "Kate, this is Jake Morrison. I pilot a Sentinel too. Listen carefully. The galaxy is under attack. Your brother needs to bond with that ship, and he needs to do it fast. Can you get him online?" A moment later, another face appeared. Danny Price looked terrified but determined. "Jake, is that really you? We've been seeing the news about what you did. I never thought I'd end up in the same situation." "Neither did I," Jake said. "But we don't have time to process. The Void Striders are here. I just took one down, but there are at least 16 more. I need your help." "I don't know how to fight," Danny protested. "I'm an engineer, not a soldier. I was a cargo hauler. We figure it out as we go. Your ship has an AI called Warden. Let it guide you. Accept the neural link and learn as fast as you can. I'm sending you the coordinates of the nearest breach. Meet me there." As Jake ended the call, Quensa spoke up. "I'm receiving similar signals from 2 other locations. More Sentinels are activating. It seems the emergence of the Void Striders has triggered something in humans across the galaxy." Jake felt a grim smile cross his face. The progenitors had planned well. When the threat emerged, when it was real and immediate, that's when the genetic markers would call to their hosts. Humans who had never known they were special would suddenly find themselves drawn to hidden ships, compelled to sit in chairs that would change their lives forever. "Send me all those coordinates," Jake said. "We need to gather every Sentinel pilot we can find and organize a defense. Warden, can you communicate with the other ship AIs?" "Yes," Warden said. "I am already establishing connections. The network the progenitors built is activating." Over the next 3 hours, Jake fought 2 more Void Striders while also coordinating with newly awakened Sentinel pilots across the galaxy. Some were experienced spacers like him. Others were civilians who had never been off their home planets before. All of them were terrified, confused, and desperately trying to learn how to fight entities from beyond reality. Danny Price joined the battle, his Sentinel emerging from faster-than-light travel just as Jake was being overwhelmed by a particularly large Strider. Together they drove it back through its breach. The young engineer proved to be a natural pilot, his technical mind helping him understand the ship's systems even faster than Jake had. More pilots arrived. Kate Price, who had activated a 3rd Sentinel at the same location as her brother, a woman named Helen Cruz from Earth itself, flying a Sentinel that had been hidden in the ocean for millions of years, a man called Paul Jenkins who had found his ship in an asteroid field. One by one, the Sentinel pilots gathered, forming an impromptu fleet, but even with 8 Sentinels now active, they were still outnumbered. The Void Striders kept coming, and the pilots were learning on the job while trying to save entire star systems. Jake found himself not just fighting but leading, coordinating the others, teaching them what Warden had taught him. He was no longer just a pilot. He had become a commander. The turning point came when they realized the breaches weren't random. The Void Striders were emerging in a pattern, following ancient fault lines in reality where the progenitor seals had weakened most. If they could predict where the next breach would open, they could be waiting with all their ships ready. Jake took the gamble. He gathered all 8 sentinels at a location where Warden predicted the largest breach would open. When it did, when reality tore open and a massive Void Strider began to emerge, they were ready. 8 ships, 8 pilots working in perfect coordination through the network Warden had established.